Carol, you could start by saying, like, why would somebody want to bring an occupational therapist into their world and when?
Well, I'm always going to say as early as possible because even the reason I wrote my book was to talk about this idea that planning for aging in place should happen as early as possible in your 20s and 30s. And why do I say things like that? Because it's hard to build healthy habits like exercise. It's hard to think about all the things that you might need to do. So when we can break that up and extend that through several decades, that's when you'd want to be taking care of these things. So when you think about when somebody leaves a doctor's office and that they have a new diagnosis of Parkinson's, my suggestion is always reach out to an OT because
Mm.
yes, you're going to have the physical aspects of it in a PT, in a fitness instructor, but an OT is a professional problem solver for you, just helping you look at what are those priorities in your life that you want to make darn sure are not going away. And what are the ideas for making sure that I don't lose any of this? I'm not going in a downhill slope and creating that holistic view of everything. So looking at the care partner, looking at the environment, looking at your social stuff, looking at, what are the things that make you you? What are the things that make you happy? So I think that involving an OT is really about, embracing what it is that you like and making sure that you're not going to give those up later on. And this is not, I don't want people to look at a diagnosis as a death sentence or debility. I want them to look at it as just another challenge, like other things that have happened in your life. And what do you do in those situations? You assess what's going on, you look for answers, and you look for your supports for to people that you can turn to for good advice that you can trust.
Many of our listeners and audience members have been living with Parkinson's for many years and loving somebody with Parkinson's for years. But for those who might be newer in the Parkinson's world and a more recent diagnosis, what are some of the things that you recommend that people can do immediately in their homes? I know you've said it's individual, but are there
Hmm.
some things you say, oh, you should really be thinking about this within the
Yeah.
first?
So, it's not, and yes, of course, there are things that you can do in your home, but, my four tenets are truly that, yes, there is home modification, but there's also physical fitness. And there are those lifestyle habits that you
Mhm.
need to embrace. And there's technology that can help like fill in some of these gaps to support you as well. So don't forget that Alexa reminders are an excellent way to offload, reminding people to drink enough water. Whatever I can take off of the caregiver needs to be done. Give it to tech, give it to routines and habits, give it to somebody else. So easy things for me are generally about number one is always going to be physical fitness. And then when it comes to the home, you want to be thinking about fall reduction, not fall reduction. I don't like that word exactly. I really want to, what I'm trying to say is making it easier for you to live in. I feel like sometimes we medicalize things too much, and I want people to think about the idea of just like, what could I do to make it easier to live in here? I mean, if I clean up and declutter, doesn't that make everybody's life easier? I think that very few people would have a hard time understanding that if I clear out my spaces, I feel psychologically better because it looks nicer and it's less risky for me to trip on something because it's not a mess everywhere. So, so thinking about those easy things that you would do anyway, you're just popping them up on the priority list. That's all. You're just saying, I'm gonna get, I'm gonna ask for a professional home organizer for Christmas. I want the handyman to come and like install better lights. Um, I want to make sure that I think carefully about furniture buying, that I don't buy white on white or gray, and gray. So you're making these intentional choices and thinking just a little bit differently about what you're going to do moving forward. And all you're doing is creating a plan. So I would say that when you leave the doctor's office, your job is to find exercise and start thinking about a plan that will benefit everybody in the house, by the way, not just because you have PD.
You mentioned, I don't know, Pat and Gail, if you know about this, but you mentioned white on white or gray on gray. Can you explain what that problem is that we're trying to solve for?
Yeah. So what it is it's the ability to be able to distinguish different height changes or different texture changes. So one of the very first um, Parkinson's falls that I had seen was that she tripped over um, the fireplace hearth. And in Florida, I'm not sure if that is common everywhere, but it was like only about an inch of concrete basically that was on the flooring. So, and because she really loved, that contemporary scan design look, which means that you're going to do, you want everything to be very blendy, she couldn't see it. So she was always tripping on it. And one of the easiest solutions for us, the cheapest solutions, was just to paint the darn thing black so that her gray floors are now like she can see the black next to her gray floors. But it was a problem when that was gray and her floors were gray. And we see similar problems in the bathroom where people traditionally have white bathrooms and white flooring and white tops. And so, for example, bending, t tilting your neck down can get really difficult. It gets stiff. And so we don't always look down enough to be able to see, you know, tripping hazards. So that's why when I'm talking about to people about design and you're rebuilding something, I'm saying, look, like you're going to buy a new cabinet, you're going to buy a new countertop anyway. So when you do that, make sure that when you look down, that countertop is a different color than your floor. So we can create that little line so we know exactly where it is. And honestly, I think about this as a care partner benefit. It's not just the person for decreasing falls. It is truly that you get less mess to clean up. For example, I had somebody with a glass table, and I was like, oh my gosh, like of all the things, that's the worst thing, right? I have no depth perception with a glass table. I can't see the edge, even if I didn't have Parkinson's. But once as soon as and what was happening was is that she would pass the dinner plate over, and he would set it down, thinking that it was on the edge, and it was not. And so now this beautiful dinner is on the floor, and it's cleanup time, and it's just you're adding more work. I am always trying to think, how do I decrease the amount of work by decreasing those kind of mistakes? And it wasn't a pretty solution, but just to keep her from having to expend more energy with cleaning, we just took painter's tape, that big blue painter's tape all around that edge so that he could see it. And the minute
Mhm.
that we did that, it stopped. Like it literally, it showed you that it was a perception problem and not anything else. Like it wasn't concentration. It wasn't even, yeah, it wasn't even just like apathy, like, ugh, I'll throw the plate down on the table. So I think that, having understanding some of these little nuances that tend to pop up over and over again, it's really good to know that and then to look at how you could implement that in your own life. Because color contrast, again, helps everybody. This is
Mhm.
not something that is just for PD. Helps everybody find things. Color coding helps people find things. I'm Canadian by background. I talk about this in my book about how I grew up in northern Manitoba, but one of the things that I had the toughest time adjusting to when I moved to the US with my husband, who's an American, was the money being all the same color. And I laughed because I was like, how do little kids figure this out if they're searching for like where the number sign is among all this green? I mean, I can barely figure it out. Or I have all these $1 bills and I feel very wealthy and I get there and I don't even have $20 worth of to pay. Okay? Like it's just crazy because if I'm Canadian, I know if I've got a green one in there, I'm good. If it's only a little blue one, I'm gonna need some more money here. So I don't even have to think about it because it's already been pre-programmed in there. The color coding is one of my absolute favorite ways to, help people manage that cognitive load, decrease that cognitive load on things. Just label everything, color code everything, be organized, and it makes everything so much easier for both care partner and the person.
That's interesting. Gail or Pat, do you have any questions or any comments on that?
I'm amazed at the money. I didn't know that's why they had color in the Canadian dollar.
Well, I
That
don't
would
know
make,
that that's why. I just think that it is, I think that, the Europeans have that too. I actually think it's only the Americans that only
yeah.
have a singular color.
I teach money in my classroom,
Huh.
and one of the biggest problems I have is getting students to understand what money is and
Hmm.
what the different denominations, whether they're coins or bills.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's interesting for me.
So you know what's really funny, Pat, then is that one of the other gripes that I have is that the American dollars are still in paper and not in this plasticky stuff. So my husband and I used to go surf and we'd want to bring money, right? So we can put the Canadian money in like a surf
Right.
pocket. It's totally fine, right? It's like kind of plasticky or whatever.
Right.
You put the American money in there, nobody's taking that money after.
Right.
So, and it makes life hard.
Yeah.
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 Uh,
Also, there's a size difference in many denominations
Yeah.
in other countries,
but
which
Yeah.
helps people with a visual handicap. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
the color
Yeah.
contrasting is really helpful. I think that I've been making notes here. That's why I'm looking down. But it's just that we don't know what's going on with our person unless they tell us, and they don't usually tell us. Right. They're not fast and quick at telling us. And you know, I need to look at some of those things in our home.
mm.
Well, I don't think
And
it's an obvious thing. I mean, I
no,
think it's one of those, like, it's kind of in the back of your subconscious. You kind of realize, like, why is it easier to do things in this space? But it doesn't click with you that it's color contrast that's
right.
helping you. You don't know why. You
Well,
just know.
I was at a hockey game the other day, and the steps were big gray steps, and the floor was big gray cement, and I
Yeah.
fall. And so I get this. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I always put things down in a calendar for my husband. I would write it in on each date, but now I realize it would have made a lot more sense if I might have used color coding
Hmm.
um, pens or just highlighters in different colors, so he knows what we're doing in the morning, what we're doing in the afternoon, and it would be more obvious than a whole page of notes.
Yeah. And color contrast is only like one example of distinguishing things, right? Like in your situation, I might have said, "Oh, well, you even could use different like tool or symbols to delineate different things, right? Like doctor's appointments are stars and visits with friends are smiley faces. Like providing a way to categorize things in your head helps your cognitive load, helps everybody's cognitive load, but especially somebody who's trying to struggle with things that used to be automatic, like taking one step and then the other and weight shifting and right, these things used to be automatic for people with Parkinson's, but like the disease has taken that part away. So they're having to work extra hard on things that used to be totally automatic. So you need to save your cognitive energy by providing cues like that can make it easier for you to understand what am I trying to do or where am I going with this?
Uh,
And that all makes it easier on the care partner because
It
otherwise
does.
you're like that kind of thing.
we've got a couple
Yeah.
of comments on color
Um,
from the audience. Maria Sarah says that the color concept to her is interesting. She said, "Could this be the reason why my husband places his coffee cup on the edge of the table? Could it be the
That's
color or
exactly
the
the
table
reason.
be blending in with the floor?"
Yes, that's exactly the reason. So in other instances, I've had times where the kitchen countertop is the same color as the flooring, so they can't see the difference. And so they always constantly picking up broken glass because of things being laid down there and it's teetering on the edge and it falls.
Mm.
So if you can't afford a new countertop, or if you're living in a rental home, what's the strategy to address that?
Painter's
Filter.
tape,
Painters.
duct tape. Yeah, I love all of these really inexpensive ways to take care of that. Or, you can even just buy paint. Just paint something differently. Maybe paint like the countertop if you can, or, find other ways to do it or cover the table. Like if it's a glass table, just buy a tablecloth at the dollar store that is a different color.
Uh,
Like you want to, yeah, delineate the edge.
I think two people have said they use colorful placemats.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And people do that with clients with dementia with the red plates to find things. There's a lot of studies. There's a really interesting one where they were trying to figure out, they thought what was happening was that their residents had just lost their appetite. And so, but they were serving white food on white plates. And it turned out that they couldn't see it because as soon as they changed it to like bright blue crockery, they suddenly the appetite went up. No, it's because you could see your food now. You could
It's
find
probably
it.
Wow.
that's that's interesting. I probably should have asked you, Carol, at the very start of this conversation, but we did have a question
Oh,
that most people get referred to, or many get referred to physical therapy upon diagnosis
yes.
and get a baseline.
Uh-huh.
What can you explain the difference for somebody between physical therapy and occupational therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. So physical therapy, I mean, I guess I don't have to explain that too much. Generally, people say, generally the trajectory is I hurt something, I need to regain something, right? So it's
Mhm.
physical. I need to get stronger in my arms or stronger in my legs, or I have to relearn how to walk again after a broken ankle. But occupational therapy is what allows you to get to your physical therapist not naked. So what we
Naked.
do is make sure that you can get out of bed, that you can like go take a shower, you can get off the toilet and you're not stuck on it, and that you can dress yourself. So we are working on the basic techniques that we generally learn, like when you're in elementary school or whatever, and you probably have taken it for granted until something happens that makes you not be able to do those things anymore. And we teach compensatory strategies of how to do that differently if it was a stroke, or how to use tools like reachers and sock aids if you had a hip replacement and you were no longer allowed to bend forward 90 degrees because of your precautions. So we're teaching those self-care tools to be able to manage on your own. And we use the words activities of daily living to describe what it is that we work on. And that to me is separated into two categories. One, which is how can I take care of myself, my personal needs, which is what I talked about just now. But then there's a second part. How do I take care of my home? Because if I don't take care of my home, how am I going to feed myself? So those we call instrumental activities of daily living.
Mhm.
And those include things like cooking, laundry, finances, grocery shopping. I mean, all of those things. Some people will call that as like a CFO, like it's your chief financial officer or chief like operations officer. So there's you taking care of you as a person, and then there's you taking care of your environment. Because groceries don't just appear in your fridge and food doesn't appear on your table. You have to be able to provide ways to take care of that. So we're looking at first, can you take care of your basic needs? And then after that, can you do these instrumental things so that you can take care of the rest of them and leave the house and interact with your community? So we're really looking at the person and how you interact with your environment.
Super. Prem asks that they've been unable to find an OT that has any experience with Parkinson's or aging in place. Is there a place that somebody can go online and look for where you find somebody like you, Carol?
Um, so my best advice, honestly, to find an OT with experience would be looking on the Parkinson's Wellness Recovery website because that is a certification program that I did, and actually my friend Melanie is on faculty there to teach people how to do this. But people who go through that training, which is it's the 2.0 version, I think, of LSVT that some people might know better. It's the more practical version of this. And so OTs or PTs that are really interested in it are going to probably go in that direction. And there's a directory on there that you can where you can find those types of clinicians. Now, the home modification part of it is part of the reason I wrote my book because you're right, it is very difficult to find an OT who is specialized in home mods. And the reason is because we don't learn about this in school. the schools are, and I talked to a professor about this because I said, this is crazy. In 10 years, we're going to have more people over 65 than under 18. I mean, if we're not educating our clinicians now about the strategies that they can use to help, we're going to be stuck soon. So how do we do this? And she said, well, it's crazy because the kinds of influences, the pressures that they have on them are such that there's just no space to put in even one extra course, which I thought was crazy. So traditionally, well, right now, the only way OTs learn about home modification is through their own search of going and getting these certifications like online on their own time, on their own dime. So there's so many out there right now and they're all different. They're not necessarily teaching the same thing. So what happens is that you're getting a lack of consistency for the person that you might hire to do that kind of thing. So I wrote my book really to educate both the average person about what are all those things that you can do, but also in hopes that it helps to guide future OTs to be able to also help other people.
Right. I think that's a great segue into this book that you've written, which is brilliant and has a full chapter on Parkinson's in here. But as people are thinking about like, what can I do in my home? What are the various first things I can do? What are the things I can do that I can afford? This is a great book, and Sarah will share a link to where you can find this book, Amazon and many other places, her on her website as well, on Carol's website. But this is all you need to know is in here, right?
You're holding my brain in your hands, Polly.
Well, I guess so one of the things that I'm thinking about is, this title is provocative, right? Age in place or find a new space. Um, what's the key? How do you know when or how that you can't age in place?
Yeah.
What's the
That's a great question. And I try to break that down into all the chapters in my book. Literally, chapter 2 in my book is the money conversation. Because if you're not looking at what the cost of care is in right now, or you're not looking at where you could go if it just turned out to be that the care partner is going to burn out because of the amount of work. Like if you don't know these answers in advance, how you don't have any ideas to get to, like once that happens, once you get to that breaking point, you don't you're it's even more stress to figure out where you need to go later, right? So and then another big part in this is that not all people are built to be caregivers, and that's okay. And you have to understand that you're not a bad person if that's hard for you or it's just not what you want to be able to do. You just have to plan financially for that. You need to be looking at your finances and saying, okay, I know that I get frustrated really easily and I don't like the person that I am when I do that. I'm not treating my spouse the way that I would normally want to treat them. So let me make sure that I'm planning for 4 hours of respite care every single week. Or that if I really need help, that, here's a community that would be near enough that has really good services that maybe that is where something that we could do later. But you can't know until you actually look at it, until you sit down and have real conversations about what's the plan and where would I go and what would happen. So you need to have backup plans in there. So one, money. You got to talk about the money.
Mhm.
You got to talk about it early and figure that out because people say to me that they're going to figure it out when they retire. And I say that is too late because you just stopped your income flow. Everything, all your decisions are made for you already because you basically have a finite nest egg that's going to now have to figure everything out. And instead, what I'm advocating for is being brave and thinking about these things in your 20s and 30s when you're doing these routine remodels. Just go and take, 15 minutes and Google like universal design ideas. What are some universal design ideas that I could potentially put in this remodel that wouldn't cost me extra money? For example, putting blocking behind your walls. They're open anyway. So a few pieces of lumber, it's really not expensive, but it is so much more expensive and a really big brain hassle to deal with if you're trying to do this after the fact and you're guessing where are those studs. These studs are an inch and a half. Do you know how hard it is to actually like hit that? And if you think about a circle being this big and an inch and a half down the middle, only like one or two of those screws are actually going to hit there. So that's why they have grab bar attachments, but it's complicated. It's complicated because you got to know what's behind there. So there are planning things about money. There are planning things about where you're going to go later, planning things about, what kind of modifications to do. And all of those things are stuff that you have to be thinking about, ideally, way in advance. And why? Because the goal is to decrease the overwhelm and stress. If you leave it all at once, you're going to suffer. And so I'm saying if you understand that I would rather, meter it out every decade and do a little bit at a time. So by the time I do retire, my bathrooms are all, easy to live in. I have color contrast everywhere, right? You don't have to worry about that. You've already paid for it. You've already done all the brain work for it. You already know where you're going with it. And honestly, if you end up moving, even better, because then you're adding a house to the market that actually is something that can work. Because the statistics are crazy. Only less than 5% of all homes in the US are even walker friendly, not even wheelchair friendly. Wheelchair friendly is under 1%. So you think about that statistic and you realize that if people want to age in place, they are going to have to put time, energy, and money into changing that space. And so my age in place or find a new space is that question. Is it worth it financially to you to make those renovations and changes now in your home? Or is it better for you to move to a place that might be more suited to what you're doing, and can you afford it? So understanding that balance in there is important.
Carol, one of the first questions I ask people when they talk about their home situation to me is number one, of course, does your person with Parkinson's fall a lot now? And do you have stairs in the house? The stairs are usually the breaking point for whether or not you can age in place.
I am very much a person that doesn't believe in blanket solutions. And in some cases, I would argue that stairs are they're a stair master that lives in your house. That's an automatic exercise tool that's there. And I have had plenty in their 80s who live on 3 stories, and they swear that that is the reason why they are still so mobile. Now,
Mm.
when we're talking about people with Parkinson's, though, that's a little bit different in my opinion because the neck stiffness that we talked about before, looking down, it's hard. So you're talking about people who are already struggling with being able to look down, and sometimes ocular issues are common with people with Parkinson's, right? Like depth perception, color changes, like all of those things. So I'm adding all of these other stressors to the situation, so I don't love stairs for people with Parkinson's. It doesn't mean that I don't love stairs for all aging in place. In that particular situation, it's doable. It's just more work. You're going to have to cognitively remember our strategies to say, oh, tuck my chin in, look down, look down. What color is it? Like installing a double banister so you have things to hold on to. Some people can do stair lifts and other tools like putting in like an elevator through the living room or whatever. Like there are other ways to get around it, but every decision you make comes with these pros and cons. They're like, which of these pros and versus cons am I willing to live with? And which of these risks are too big of a risk for me to say I'm going to take that for the potential benefit it has later?
One of our questions earlier was one of these preventative. The person said um, they've got wooden stairs that are all the same color.
Yeah,
They haven't noticed I guess she says, I haven't noticed that with my husband, it's a problem, but she wants to be prepared. What would
yeah,
you say for that? Because you were
yeah.
talking about color contrast and
Yeah.
banisters.
It's very easy, actually. They sell grip tape that is color in lots of different colors, and you just put it on the edge so that as you're going down, you're getting both traction, like physical st traction, and then color differentiation between where the end of one stair ends and then the other one starts. And then they also sell lights, little like motion activated lights for stairs
Mm.
that you can like put on each of the steps. If you're building from scratch, it's even easier because you can integrate all of those in there. You can put like these, like LED strip lighting is really cheap, and you can just put in like LED strip lighting that goes all the way, controlled by motion sensing at the bottom. And then lastly, Promenade is like a brand of handrail. They do a lot in movie theaters, in hospitals and stuff. But they now have like this little light strip underneath, which is really cool. So that when you come up the stairs, you have light under down looking downwards, like at your feet. So think about like when you go to movie theaters, right? You don't want light up here. You want light to so you don't trip on the floor. So they do the same concept for homes.
It's interesting. We have another question, not about physical space, but this person says that her husband is having a very difficult time using his computer, which he
Mm.
loves. Are there any tools that you recommend that, or would an occupational therapist coming into a home and helping with that help? What do you recommend?
I think an occupational therapist in a clinic could answer some of those questions. I mean, literally that. So one of the things I want people to recognize about OT is that it isn't one solution. The question was, he's having difficulty with computer use, right? And I can't answer that question without more details, right? Like, why is he having trouble? Is it vision? Is that he can't use his fingers to type? Is it that he keeps like hitting the like the wrong button because he can't see it, can't feel it. It's right or shaking, right? So you need to know reasons why. Now, one of the wonderful things about the last few years is voice. So voice dictation is available on Word these days. You can buy little microphones, like you don't have to be shouting at the computer anymore. Like you can buy a little clip that goes right here and it will connect with your computer. So I would imagine that an OT could help you distinguish first, what are the reasons why, what's stopping me from using it, and then breaking each of those down and saying, okay, if it's a color issue, we're going to get you an external keyboard with a different color. If it is like a tremor issue, you can change accessibility functions inside so that you get like, so it's not nearly as sensitive. If it's like I can't see the screen, well, let's ex put an external monitor on there that's really big and now you can see it. So you have to tease out why, and then you can start by knocking all of those ideas off.
That's much more complex than I imagined. Right there. But so is
Everything,
Parkinson's, right?
I mean, everything is though. People will routinely text me and say, "What's the best shower chair?" I'm like, "What's the problem you're trying to solve?" Like, I don't know. That depends, and it drives people crazy. But it's really like my message is truly that you have to look at you. Like, there is no magic answer for everybody. There's a magic answer for your particular situation, but you have to be able to understand like why that's good and what is it that I'm trying to solve.
Yeah. Bruce asks us, do you have any guidance for care partners, like helping their person with Parkinson's out of a chair, bed, dressing? The real question is, how do we as care partners prevent back strains and all?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. So, and actually, I do talk about this in my book a little bit, which is, one, decreasing friction, and two, weight shifting. Those are your two magic things for all transfers, like bed mobility transfers, up and down from the chair transfers, getting in and out of a booth at a restaurant. These are all related to that. It has not nothing to do with muscle strength. It has more to do with your motor planning skills. What order do I recruit my muscles in? So let me give you an example. So sit to stand, for example, one of the reasons that people think that they can't get up from a chair anymore is because their quads are weak. But the real problem is that, especially with people with Parkinson's, they forget that they don't have that automatic instinct anymore, that the only way to get up from this chair is to scoot to the edge of the chair and then lean their body weight forward because I can't get up if all my weight is sitting on my bottom. I can only get up if I lean my weight forward so my bottom is not doesn't weigh as much anymore and I push up from the armrest, right? So the cue that I teach is nose over toes and then stick your bottom in the air. And when you do that, suddenly things are easy. And I tell people, you didn't grow muscles, okay, in the last 30 seconds. This has to do with the order that you did it in and how you did it. How were you cued? So I would point to, I did a recent podcast with Come For Care, which is a home care agency, and they had asked me specifically about, how can we have our aides be able to help people get out of a chair and stuff? And because my big thing is stop stealing their therapy. Because when you lift somebody up off of a chair, you just took away their ability to grow leg muscles and arm muscles and stomach muscles. And you're creating this cycle of dependence that if you're not there, I can't get up. And that's so hard on a care partner. You can't be the only person to be able to do that. What your job is to help people, cue them, teach them what they need to do, be there if they need a little extra boost to the bum to get up all the way, remind them, when you're get in that situation where your bum is up, now your chest has to come up, chest up, because people with Parkinson's tend to feel like the 45-degree angle is upright, but it's not, right? If you show them a mirror or show them a video, they're like, wait, what? What just happened there? Like, I'm not doing that. So feedback, tactile feedback from a care partner to that person or visual feedback like a mirror, those are all really helpful to teach that. So that is the weight shifting part. And then the friction reducing is, like I think we've talked about this before with comfort linen jammies, like decreasing that friction of your pajamas on the sheets makes it easier to roll left and right and to be able to get out of the bed and for care partners to slide somebody in the bed more frequently. And that particular brand, 80% of their sales are Parkinson's.
Oh,
I
really?
mean, yeah, because it works so effectively and because bed mobility is one of the number one complaints when people go to when they go to outpatient. The care partner's back is just the biggest problem in it because you're leaning over all the time in this awkward position. And how many times do you get in and out of bed every day? At least twice, maybe 3 times or 4. How many times are you getting back in and out of the bed if somebody's getting up 5 times a night to go to the bathroom? Like that's a lot of care partner back use that you can decrease with a product that will decrease the friction, which then is twofold. One, it makes the person feel empowered and more independent, and then it decreases the work on a caregiver. And sure, sometimes you might still have to help, but anything that we can do to drop that percentage, even if it's dropping that percentage from like they need 75% of the time they need help to 50% of time that they need help. Look, you just gained 25%. Use that
What
energy
was the
for
name
something
of
good.
the
Oh,
linen?
it's called Comfort Linen. And it was created by a PT, a physical therapist who in Canada, whose job was to decrease the strain on nursing. Like they were having all these nurses hurt their backs, and workers' compensation was looking for a way to decrease that. And so they did all this research on testing of hospital sheets of how do I decrease that friction in there. And then when she retired as a PT, I think so many people asked her about it that she created a consumer version with like luxury pajamas rather than a draw sheet and sheets that look like sheets, not hospital sheets. So her intent being, people need beauty in their lives.
Mhm.
And I completely agree with that. I mean, the subtitle in my book talks about that beauty, and it's not superficial. The need for having, equipment in your house that blends with your environment that feels like home. This is science-based. There are lots of studies about neuroaesthetics, which is the study of how aesthetics changes your nervous system,
Mm.
that you can enter a space that is nicely decluttered and you feel happier. Why would you feel happier with that, right? There is a real connection to that. And for me, with bathrooms, when you create spaces that are beautiful, it creates calmness. And that calmness can help you sustain any kind of fear you might have of falling if you've fallen previously. before, or other reasons like the anxiety that you might get as just one of those non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's.
Yeah. I think, Carol, it may have been you or another occupational therapist who suggested for transfers in like in a car to put a just a plastic grocery bag under the seat of the
Yeah.
person
I
who you're
I
trying to
love that
treat.
idea. So because I'm always thinking about aesthetics, I actually prefer a big black garbage bag because it blends into like the seat better. Like otherwise, it looks just like your car's messy if you have like a little garbage bag, a little shopping bag. And if you think about the physics behind it, it makes perfect sense. You have two surfaces, you put down your black garbage bag, and you've got two surfaces that can do this, right? So now all you're doing is just going shh, and then you stand up and down and it goes back, right? That's all you're doing. You're just trying to take two surfaces and decrease the friction between them.
Yeah. Gail, I haven't called on you,
Yes.
or do you have any tips that
Well,
would be
I
helpful?
was just thinking about movement that we take for granted. I remember my husband was in a car accident and he was had some brain injury. And as he was coming out of it, he said, "Oh, I want to take off this t-shirt. How do I do it?" And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. And I had to go through the movements and realized how complicated it is
It's
and you can ask anyone. If I ask you, how do you do it? You'd have to go back into your mind and recreate the situation. It's the same thing with walking up and down the stairs. It's that weight shift that we take for granted. But when you break it down, when you break down every one of their movements, you realize it's not just, well, stand up or sit down. I ended up putting um, door stoppers underneath all of my furniture because when my husband would stand up, he'd push against the furniture, the back of his legs, he'd push against the furniture, and all the furniture would end up moving back to the wall. And he still couldn't get up because then he would fall back into the chair. So having those door stops to prevent the legs from sliding
Mm.
was a really big help. But all these things to break them down, you realize some of them take, I don't know, 6 to 10 steps to
yeah.
do it. It's
And
not
we
just,
call
oh,
that Yeah, we call that activity analysis. And so it's a fundamental training of OTs where we need to look at one activity and break it into these micro components. So
yeah,
that's how we train people to do that. So we say like we're going to do this. Now, dressing, what you mentioned, is difficult because we all dress differently. So some people just, go whook, and then some people take one arm out, in and out, and then over the head, so your routine is different with each person. So
yeah.
understanding that
I think
preference is also an
observing
important
them,
part.
if you observe your individual walking down the stairs or walking up the stairs, and you watch where they are, how erect they are when they're walking up the stairs rather than putting their upper body more forward to get that weight shift, you can look at that and then you can say, oh, that's what needs to be corrected. So even with going down the stairs, I noticed that my husband's heel was always getting stuck on the step he was leaving. So he'd lift his foot up, not enough, and his heel would get stuck. So he created a system where I would talk about marching. So he'd have to march, like kick his leg out to get to that next step. And it made a huge difference. And when you keep on repeating march, 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 it gets in there. And now when I walk up and downstairs, I say march to myself. It worked. It really did work.
And I love that idea because what you're doing is you're overtraining for that. So like you're saying, okay, I want to take a step, but I want to take a bigger step. So marching is a bigger step. So it gives you a margin of error so that between what you think is a march and what they think is they're perceiving that they're doing.
Mhm.
Now we've got some buffer in there so that
Yeah.
it doesn't matter because it's the most common thing that I've seen with people with Parkinson's that they think that they're making a big motion, but they're actually doing this instead of
Yeah.
this, right? So this lifting the foot up is the most common fall mechanism. It catches on the curb. It catches on the like even a walk-in shower that maybe it's only 4 inches of a lift, But they
Yes.
think they're doing 4 inches, but they're actually doing 2 inches. So it's going
Yeah.
to catch every time. So
So, yeah.
visual, so your verbal cue is
Verbal
perfect. It's,
cueing,
yeah,
right.
march, 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 right? And so it cues in there that this is the kind
Hmm.
of thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you a quick story about that one. My son would always forget to put the garbage bag back in after he would take the garbage out. And so I started hearing him like take the garbage out and he'd go, bag, bag. So I'm just saying that this is for everybody, right? We all
Uh-huh.
need visual cues. We are all thinking about other things. Like the more supports, environmental supports like that, or tricks like that we can build into our lives, the better.
Yeah.
You
It
know,
saves many times he would fall backwards going up the stairs and take me down with him because I was always behind him with my hand right in the small of his back. And it was like, oh no. Yeah.
ouch.
It's so hard not to be a pain when you're a caregiver and not always be on their case. It's so hard. And you feel like a monster. You feel you can't even stand to be with yourself, let alone have them be with us because we're so annoying.
You know what? And I would challenge you to talk to an OT to assess what is the care partner doing that could be offloaded to the person to do by themselves, to
Mm.
technology, to a product. Like where are the areas that you are over helping? Because I think the tendency is that we try to show love by doing for somebody, but it's hurting the care partner in the long run. It's hurting the person in the long run. It leads to burnout. It leads to weakness. So having somebody assess that and break those things down so that you do the things that only you can do and leave everything else to somebody else or something else or some other way of doing it.
Well, we can do everything pretty much, but you're right. We need to give them our person the ability to do for themselves because I create because I'm hard of hearing and stuff, but I've taken that to my advantage where I have selective hearing, so that she will do things on her own. And it's always I just get started to do something and I get on for me, and then I get asked to do something else. And then I select the hearing. But there's so many things in here that benefit the person with Parkinson's and the care partner
Yeah.
for relieving the stress, but also, I mean, I have a depth perception. I tore out my knee a couple years ago because I missed a step on the stairs. We bought a home. We moved into our home 26 years ago, and I was looking forward to having, it's a two-story house. I was looking forward to having the big master suite upstairs and everything. But the house that in our neighborhood that was in our price range, the master bedroom was downstairs. And I remember the time I looked over there and I said, well, you just never know.
Mm.
Maybe we'll need that.
This hour has sped by, and Carol, we've got so many great comments in the chat, thanking you and saying that this was pure gold
Yeah.
Oh,
for
fun.
folks. And thank you, Carol, Pat, Gail, for serving our community in all the ways you do. And thank you to all of the audience for being here today and spending an hour with us. We look forward to being back together on Tuesday, March 3rd, same time, same place. So thank you all.